Hello, brothers and sisters. Thank you for joining me on this Be the Bible presentation. I am glad that you're here with me. Today, I'd like to ask, what kind are you? And I hope that my thoughts on the topic will bless you as we continue on with this presentation. The world is filled with all kinds of people. Many of them are consumed with a lust for money, power, and recognition. There are those who devise schemes, engage in illegal activities, or target others to get what they want. There are people who put others over themselves, who always have a kind word and a smile, who are willing to give you their last if you need it. In either case, the kind of person you are and the deeds you've done, good or bad, surely produce results. Listen to Genesis, the first chapter and the 11th verse, also the 21st through the 22nd verses. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself, upon the earth." And it was so. And God created great whales, and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the fowl multiply in the air." The Hebrew word for kind is min. It means to portion out. So when I ask, "What kind are you?" I'm really asking, what are you portioning out? What are you sowing into the world around you? Expect that it will reproduce, multiply, and eventually come back to you. Notice that God gave every living thing He put on earth the ability to produce more like itself. I believe that this is more than just God's way of filling the earth with life. It is a universal principle that we are and forever will be subject to. We often hear, "What goes around comes around," or we speak of karma. These are not new concepts as they've been in place since the beginning. What you receive will be directly related to what you have portioned out, spiritually and naturally. So I ask again, what kind are you? We all know of or have heard of someone whose only concern is for themselves. They are someone who is always thinking about how to get over on the system and has no regard for others. For a time, they seem to get away with their misdeeds. But isn't it amazing to see their stunned, embarrassed, and sometimes angry reactions when what they have portioned out has multiplied and come back to them? Isn't it equally as amazing to see someone who has portioned out the fruit of the Spirit, according to Galatians 5:22 and 23, receive the desires of their heart? Perhaps this person had repeatedly faced ridicule, setbacks, and disappointments, all the while remaining fruitful even in the midst of their hardships. I believe God calls the attributes of the Spirit fruit because it is in keeping with the verses we read in Genesis. The seeds of the fruit will grow, multiply, and return to you so that you can partake in its goodness. But first, you must sow them or portion them out. Let's look at two lesser known biblical characters who are perfect examples of our topic, Nabal and his wife Abigail. Nabal was a very wealthy man with thousands of goats and sheep. While in the desert of Maon, David saw Nabal's shepherds and took it upon himself to protect them from bandits and thievery. Later, David, in need of supplies, sent his men to ask Nabal for help. Nabal, being a wicked man who cared only for himself and his possessions, insulted David's men and refused to help. This blatant disrespect angered David, and he set out to destroy Nabal and likely take all of his possessions. Abigail, having been told by one of her servants what had taken place, gathered together enough food to feed David and his men. She met David as he was nearing her home and pronounced blessings and presented to him the gifts of food. Because of Abigail's kindness, David decided not to continue with his campaign against her husband. Upon returning home, Abigail found her husband having a banquet fit for a king. He was completely unaware that she had saved his life and the lives of his male servants. After he sobered up from his drinking, Abigail told him of how he had just narrowly escaped David's wrath. Once the reality and the seriousness of the situation set in, Nabal became so terrified that he passed out, fell into a coma, and eventually died. Abigail, on the other hand, so impressed David that he asked her to become his wife after Nabal's death. Nabal and Abigail were two people who were very different in what they portioned out. What they each received in return was also vastly different. What kind of person was Nabal? The passage states that he was a wicked and foolish man whom no one could talk to and who hurled insults at others. He most likely lived lavishly, did whatever he wanted, and frequently humiliated people. In contrast, Abigail was a beautiful and intelligent woman who spoke blessings and met the needs of others. She was obviously approachable and had compassion on those around her. This is evident in the servant feeling comfortable enough to speak truthfully to her. Nabal most certainly thought that he would continue to get away with his greed and the contempt that he portioned out around him. He even threw a lavish party after having utterly disrespected David, a sign that he thought nothing of what he had just done. That's the kind of person he was. Unfortunately, it cost him his life. Abigail no doubt suffered some demeaning comments from her husband, yet she remained fruitful, even asking David to spare her husband's life, a man whom she knew would continue to be self-centered and wicked. As a result, she became the wife of a king. Brothers and sisters, please consider the story of Nabal and Abigail. Look at what kind they were and how their fruit came back to them. The principle of portioning out is no different for us today than it was for them because God has not changed. Galatians 6 and 7 says, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked, for whatever a man soweth, that he shall also reap." Nabal and Abigail are witnesses to this scripture, and you and I are witnesses also. Whatever we are portioning out, we will also receive. So, what kind are you? Brothers and sisters, I hope that I've given you something to think about in reference to the topic and the scriptures we've read today. Hopefully, you will consider what kind you are and what you're portioning out to those around you. Also, remember that as you are out amongst your family, friends, and co-workers, many of them don't read the Bible, so please be the Bible for them. Thank you and be blessed.